Welcome to the Transport Leaders podcast, where we discuss breakthrough ideas and bold solutions transforming the future of transport around the world. Join a global community of transport leaders, professionals, academics, and advocates as we unpack transport's toughest challenges and spotlight the strategies driving real change. From system reform levers and political realities to sustainability and technological disruption. Join myself, Graham McCabe and Russell King, and our guests as we offer perspectives as we discover ways to transform our transport systems. G'day everyone, I'm Graham McCabe. I'm founder of Step Advisory, a transport planning and traffic engineering firm, and I've worked in consultancy and government for over 25 years across Australia and Australasia.
And hello, I'm Russell King. I'm a transport strategist and founder of the Transport Leader newsletter and blog. And I've worked on the policy side of transport for nearly 20 years.
Okay, Russell, what are we going to talk about today?
Today it is buses, Graham.
Buses. Oh, I should change my background name.
Yes, no more light rail. Today it's all about buses. What's good about buses? What's bad about buses? What do we get wrong about buses? What do we get right about buses?
Okay, so Russell, I'll rip out the trams behind me and replace them with buses.
Yep, yeah. We've done it before. Why can't we do it again?
Well, yeah, smart decision back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Why did we do it? Get rid of trams and streetcars and replace them with buses.
It's a good question. I haven't looked at it in detail. I think from the things I've sort of read around the topic, I think it was not really about buses or trams. It was really about cars. And it was about making sure that cars had access to these places where trams were going down, because trams were getting in the way. And I think there was a lot of lobbying from various pro-car groups to get rid of the trams and replace them with buses. And I think there was also a kind of logic which says trams are restricted to where they can go. Buses have much more flexibility about where they can go.
Yeah, and that's one of the hallmarks of why transport planners like buses is their flexibility. If a route doesn't work, you can change it. You can move it. You can, if there's a new hospital, you can move your bus routes very easily to support the hospital. And while we don't do it that often, network redesigns are much easier to achieve when you're using a bus system.
Yeah. So if you're changing, the structure of your city is changing over time. So jobs are moving from, say, a concentrated CBD and becoming more dispersed across your city. You know, if you've got a light rail, it's much more difficult to flex that system to adapt to the changes in the demand patterns that you've got across your city, whereas a bus you could easily do it. But so what is the role of the bus in the sort of the transport system? Because it's not as though, you know, buses are sometimes in cities and sometimes not. Buses pretty much are ubiquitous around the vast majority of cities around the world.
Yeah, and even when tram systems were being introduced, there were still buses. So trams are they're a higher capacity vehicle where you have a lot of demand, or you want to create a lot of demand along the corridor. Whereas buses, you can flex up and down the number of vehicles in service, the routes that they're using. You can have lots of route options, which is a whole separate issue of legibility of networks. And you can have anything from a small bus, which might carry 10, 12 people, up to bi-articulated buses and trackless trams, which carry 200 to 300 people in them. So, you know, competing with the number of passengers that a tram would carry. And most buses are run on diesel. You know, we can. I'm sure there's lots of podcasts out there from other people about the destructive nature of the automobile industry in moving us to diesel buses. But they're increasingly becoming electrified around the world. So do a really good job in moving people, and in many parts of the world they carry a vast more significant number than trains and rail do, even when there's good transport systems, just because of the amount of coverage that you can get with a bus.
Yes, and they work really well for lots of different groups of people as well, right? So you know, if you can't drive, it's one of the best options, right? Because it's significantly cheaper than, say, having to get a taxi. So if you're one of those groups of people that, you know, isn't able to drive, then the bus is really important, you know, for your accessibility and mobility. It can work really well for commuters as well. You know, as long as you get sort of bus priority right, and we can talk about that later. So it can work really well for them as well. And it can work really well for sort of short local trips that are a bit too long for, say, walking and cycling, but don't necessarily need a car for you to be able to access, you know, say, a library or something like that.
Yeah, and it is very much it's a travel distance thing. So your, you know, walking trips, healthy fit person, you're targeting up to 2 kilometers. Cycling trips 2 to 5 kilometers, even with e-bikes. Going beyond 5 kilometers is still you know, a significant barrier for most people. And then in that 5 to 15 kilometer range of travel is where, you know, buses have that absolute sweet spot of carrying people. They're fast enough that they get you there in a reasonable time, but not fast enough that you would want to, if you're going beyond 15 kilometers, you definitely want to get yourself to a train if one's available. Even with a BRT, you know, BRTs are successful in various places in the world, but you hit a comfort limit, particularly with a diesel bus, of the noisy, they bounce, they jerk, you've got constant vibration, you've got the smell. So long bus rides become uncomfortable. And cities and cities around the world where they've tried to do really long bus routes, where there is an alternative, they find they actually end up bringing them back. Firstly, because there's nobody traveling end to end, and then if there's a better option, then people will choose the better option.
Yeah,
which unfortunately often involves driving.
Yeah. So there's lots of buses out there, as you said, right? But I think it's fair to say that success around buses is mixed. Some places they seem to generate a lot of patronage, other places not so much. So what makes buses successful within a transport system? What do you need to do to make them successful?
Yeah, so like any part of a transport network, you've got 2 different types of demand. One is the stop to destination demand. So to final destination, so everybody getting a bus into a CBD area. And then there's on-off. Are you having turnover along the way? So your typical suburban bus route will pick up everybody along the way, drop them in a town centre or a railway station. And then you go to the next level up and you have town centre to town centre connections. So you will have some people doing a full length journey, and then others who are getting on and off along the way. And this is why buses can seem empty. If you're sitting in a car and there's a bus lane and a bus goes past you with only 5 people on it in the middle of the day, you go, well, why am I subsidising that? Ignoring the fact that the road that you're sitting on is being subsidised.
Let's not go down that route. We'll talk about car subsidies.
Because you're seeing it at a point in time. You're not seeing all the people who've got on and off the bus along the way.
Yeah.
So a bus that's making money doesn't need to be full. It needs to have full fare paying passengers, and we'll talk about public transport fares another time.
Yes, let's not go down that rabbit hole either.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Too many rabbit holes on this conversation.
So it has the equivalent of full fare paying passengers along the route. So when we design bus networks, we're looking at what the peak loading is, the number of vehicles that are required to service that load, and the number of vehicles relates to the capacity of the vehicles, and can you get enough drivers? Do you want to pay more for a big bus? Do you want to have lots of small buses? So the bus that's selected is basically the biggest bus that you need, because the cost of running the bus around, a big bus around for more hours with fewer people inside of it, is less than buying two smaller buses to then have two drivers during peak hour.
Yeah,
because the people are the biggest cost, and there are now public bus routes in China that are fully autonomous buses. So that actually inverts everything. You actually want to then buy smaller buses and have lots of frequency, because same as an automated metro, you get the same throughput without having the human capital cost of, the human operations cost of running those services.
Yes, because the operating cost of a bus, is it something like 60+% as the driver?
Yeah. So you're looking, I don't know what the latest number is, but the cost of the driver in Australia, roughly $70 to $80 an hour, when you include all the additional costs that go on top of their salary. And then your next largest component is the fuel, and then the capital cost of the bus, and then maintenance.
Okay, let's put a pin in the conversation about autonomous buses, because we'll do a separate podcast, I think, on autonomous buses, because I think it is a radical change, and it's not just simply taking the driver out. I think there's a whole bunch of other implications which we need to work through in a separate podcast. But let's talk about different aspects of the buses. So let's talk about stopping patterns, right? Bus stops and frequency of bus stops, because it makes a massive difference to accessibility. So how many people can access the bus within a distance, right? But also then in terms of journey time, because if you're having to make 20 stops, it makes a massive difference compared to just making 5 stops for the people on that bus. So how do you decide on your stopping frequency?
Yeah, well, so I actually wrote a guideline on this. So
I'm talking to the right person. That's a relief.
So I wrote one for a bus stop placement guideline for internal use in Transport for New South Wales, but also managed 2 projects for Australians on road public transport priority. So so going back in history, so in Sydney, you could ring up a bus company and say, I want a bus stop out the front of my house, and then put a bus stop out the front of your house. So you get an individual bus stop. So literally there was one part of Sydney that I was working on where there was, the closest bus stops were 90 meters apart from each other.
Yep. That's nice.
And it was historically people had asked for a bus stop. So which is basically a hail and ride service, and they do exist in areas where you don't have footpaths or large populations. So that's your most basic level, and then you move up a level into regularly placed bus stops. And the general guideline is 400 meters. A 400 meter catchment around a local bus service. Historically, that's been a circle on a map because people weren't very good at analysing catchments. Now you can do it as a catchment based activity. So what can you actually, are you actually walking 400 meters rather than that 400 meters being interrupted by a river or a railway line or a motorway?
Yeah, or is it uphill?
Yeah, well, still even gradient isn't actually considered that much in bus stop placement.
Avoid living in hilly places.
Well, I live in a hilly place, and it's a very steep downhill to get to the bus stop, but also a very steep uphill to get back home again.
I have a very steep uphill to get to the station, which I'm, but it gets me good exercise, so I can't complain.
Yeah, well, but it does also have a mobility impact.
Yeah, absolutely, it does.
Yeah, and if you're using time as your category, as your access time to the stop, then it takes longer to walk uphill than it does to walk downhill. So it actually shrinks your catchments. So you go every 400 meters, and for a basic level, then you step up to 800 meters for semi-express services, and then 1 to 2 kilometers for express services. And then you place bus stops around network features. So are there, do they provide access into a residential or industrial area where people can walk and distribute and be collected from the surrounding network? And then land use features, so schools,
retirement
healthcare facilities, shopping centres, those type of things. So you might start off with saying, well, we'll do a stop every 400 meters and randomly place them in a line.
Yeah,
that's most basically, and then you start moving them around. So you'll end up in a town centre, you'll have stops that are 200 meters apart.
Yeah,
because of different features.
Yeah, so you're kind of working it through in terms of optimizing the bus stops. And how much does journey time factor into this? Because journey time is one of the things that's a really big factor on bus success. You talked about express services, etc. And that's one of the big rationales for express and semi-express services is it dramatically speeds up the journey.
Yeah, so it's about 20 seconds for every stop. So the activity of slowing down and stopping, opening your doors, closing them, starting off again, getting back up to prevailing travel speed is about 20 seconds. And then there's the time of the people getting on and off the bus.
Yeah. And then one of the things they do on BRT is a lot of ticketing off the bus. So people can walk onto the bus and don't have to scan the ticket, which then takes more time, etc., and those sorts of things, right? So and I know some of the modern systems as well, it don't even require you to tap on or tap off. It's just on your app on your phone. It detects that you're actually on the bus and just charges you automatically on the fare, which then again speeds you up. Yeah,
and having level boarding, all door loading.
Yeah.
So you reduce your individual's time of boarding or alighting from 5 to 7 seconds down to around 3 seconds, with all that automation of the improvement of the loading and unloading activity. So the more doors you have, the bigger doors you have, level floors, wide aisles, then it's becoming more and more like the thing behind me.
Yeah.
Tram.
The other thing I think we should probably mention, especially as someone from London, you need to think about double deckers, because the issue with double deckers is also that dwell time problem, because people getting up and down stairs.
Yeah, and it gets even worse if you have restricted workplace health and safety policies, which say you're not allowed to go up and down the stairs or stand on the top deck while the vehicle's moving.
Yes. It takes
so it takes a very long time to load and unload the bus. So every stop has a much higher dwell time. So then the other biggest factor in your journey time is your travel speed and the interruptions from things like traffic signals. So, but people care more about reliability. Something can be reliably slow so long as it's within an expected window.
So you know you're not going to be 20 minutes late for work because the bus is reliably turns up and gets in at a reliable time. So you can actually go, I know which bus I need to get, and I can be very confident that it'll get me there 99% of the time.
Yeah, and a lot of the problem with comfort on buses is that timetables are squeezed so tight that drivers are accelerating and braking hard. And when, particularly with the way that diesel buses are manufactured and some battery electric buses now, is you have a big mass at the back of the vehicle. So when you're starting out, the front wheels dig in because the back wheels are where the power is.
Yep.
So you actually create a momentum like that.
Yeah.
And then when you're stopping, the same thing happens again.
For those not watching the video, when he went like that, just what Graham meant was
there's a rotational effect.
Okay, and you can feel the pull on your body.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So why do they make the timetable so tight?
Money. It's always money. Everything's money. So
hold on, just to be clear, this is the time equals money, right? So
time equals money.
Because what we're doing here is there is a smarter way to get that quicker journey time than the drivers braking and accelerating faster and harder, right? Which then gets us onto bus prioritization.
Yes. Yeah. So the timetables are set tight because of competitive tendering. So under the system that we have in the UK and Australia with bus contract tendering, is you're given these are the routes. Here's all the information about how fast buses are going at the moment. You develop an optimized timetable that charges based on kilometers and hours, and then that's how we're going to pay you. So the optimization piece is to optimize the number of hours. So the service hours, the hours that are being provided to the customer with the fewest buses.
Yes, and the problem here for me is the smartest way of speeding up the buses is through bus prioritization, right? So dedicated bus lanes, advanced, traffic light systems. So they, the bus light, the green, the light, the traffic light goes green when the bus approaches. Those sorts of things. Okay, but that doesn't get taken into account, right? It's just this. It assumes the status quo. So you lose one of the incentives for bus prioritization in that there's, from the franchise perspective, they don't have the power to run the operator, and once it's been tendered, they have to deliver to that anyway, and so you kind of, that's the expectation, rather than within the agency responsible for doing bus prioritization, rather than actually undertaking bus prioritization.
Yeah, and so one of the roles I had in New South Wales government was managing the planning for bus priority, but then also doing operational improvements. So it's small scale improvements where the contracted operators were having trouble meeting their schedule. So, when you have the tender phase, there's always an element in the contract which is exemptions to the reliability component. So the timetable adherence, and that's congestion. So, unforecast congestion, and guess what? Congestion increases every year.
Yes.
So the tenderers are given a model level of what their travel time should be, and then as congestion increases, they go, well, we can't meet this timetable. We need a congestion supplement, and knowing that is now built into the contracts. It's a risk management exercise.
Yeah.
For the contractors.
But it doesn't improve the service.
No, it just makes them more likely to actually be profitable. Rather than lose money. And bus operations is a money losing prospect.
Yeah. So why do we not have massive bus prioritisation across Sydney then? You're in bus prioritisation, you understand all of this stuff. What was holding you back, Graham?
I'm throwing this one back at you. This is not a technical issue. This is a political issue.
I know that, but I'm asking what your perspective was, because I think that is
all right.
important angle, right? Because you were in there in the heart of the government body, responsibility for doing bus prioritisation. You knew technically what needed to be done.
Yeah.
Okay. What was your perception of what was holding you back?
An unwillingness to cause pain to car drivers. So a lot of bus priority projects will widen the road to add the bus lane, or we'll put in a left turn lane with a bus queue jump in it, or not. So going back to our previous episode, not willing to take away from car drivers because bus passengers are just accepting the crap reality that they have, whereas car drivers get angry and contact politicians if you get paid. So there was always plans that we would self-moderate our approach on, because we knew they would not get endorsed for delivery. So you end up with starting out with, okay, well, this is the thing that we would know will work, and then there's self-censorship, because you would push things up the line and you get pushback from higher level people, and then there would be projects which were no-brainer projects, which would actually get killed by local MPs when they got briefed, and they'd say, well, no, I'm going to the minister because this is not going to happen. So and some of these were projects which actually didn't do anything to cars. They just added a new piece of bus infrastructure.
Yep. So one of the things I think we add to the difficulty on this is when we split the roles of the Minister for Roads and the Minister for Transport. Because you then have the problem of you have to get two ministers over the line on these things, as well as you say, how do you get the local MPs on board as well?
Yeah, members of Parliament for people outside of the
Westminster system. Yeah, so you've got that political challenge, but some places do it well anyway. So it's not impossible, is it? But as you say, you've got to be, as a minister in charge of transport, you've got and roads, you have to be willing to communicate what you're doing and communicate well and why.
And you have to have commitment.
Yeah.
So you can't go to water after the first oppositional piece.
Yes. And I think one of the things here is, smart politics on this is if you want to do a proper bus prioritization program, you need political cover, right, as a minister. And you kind of need to go and sit down with your premier or prime minister or whatever, or whoever is in charge, and go, this is the right thing to do. Here's all the benefits. Here's why it's going to all help, the congestion in the city and moving people around, etc. Okay. And it will be painful in the implementation phase, because it's the implementation phase. Once it's in, things start to settle down, don't they? People change their driving patterns to adjust to the new reality.
Yeah, and so you do get mode shifts, and you definitely get travel time improvements with enhanced bus priority. So, and areas where population is growing, you might not get mode shift from people in cars, but you get the mode split changes as the population grows, as people move into the area who are more likely to want to use a bus.
Yeah, they're going to have they're about to form a new habit in how they travel, because they just moved to the area.
Yeah.
And if there is a really good bus service with lots of bus priority to get them where they want to go, they're much more likely to choose the bus than they would otherwise.
Yeah, and it's easier to move somebody who hasn't formed a habit than somebody who has.
Yeah. Now, in New South Wales recently, we recently had a bus review.
Yeah.
Right? And we can talk about... I mean, let's be frank about the review, right?
Yeah, it's the same as the 2003 one.
It's the same as the 2003 one, right? Yeah. But it's not as though we disagree with any of the recommendations.
No, they're all great recommendations. We just haven't implemented them in the last 22 years.
But it's a copy and paste, as you say, from 22 years ago, right?
I'm sure there was some new work in there.
Yes, I'm not ditching the people, but in terms of the recommendations, you just had to dust off 2003 and a little bit of updating, and you were there pretty much, right? The question for me is, that's 22 years ago, and we talked about the problems with bus priority. There's a lot more stuff in there than bus priority.
Yeah.
Right? Why have we neglected buses?
They're always the poor cousin.
Yeah, and it's like, but they move in terms of public transport. They move
more people.
The lion's share, right? They're much more. They move much more people than ferries in Sydney's case, or light rail, or even the rail network, or metro, right? So in terms of public transport, people, it's the lion's share, and that's true in many cities around the world, right? Why do buses get neglected? Therefore, what's going on that they get neglected? What do you think it is?
Well, they have a personality issue. You've got the
they're not sexy.
You got the grumpy driver. You've got the noisy, dirty, stinky bus. You've got the bus that doesn't turn up, that gets cancelled without you having any information, that is unreliable and doesn't get you.
But isn't all this stuff like you go, these are all problems that a politician can go, right, let's get some new buses, let's do a customer service program and support our drivers in becoming more friendly. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do in terms of let's upgrade some bus stops. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do that to help people on this. As for politicians, you can make buses sexier, nicer livery, and you can put in digital platforms so you can see where the bus is, and whether it's about to turn up on time or not. There's a whole bunch of nice systems that you can put in place, all of which improve the buses, but we don't seem to take those opportunities.
We don't, and we've got a very limited number of true BRTs in Australia. We've got southeast and northeast Northern Busway in Brisbane. We've got the two transitways in Sydney plus the M2. No BRT in Victoria. South Australia's got the Oban. No BRT in WA, Tasmania, ACT or Northern Territory. So when we do it, it's actually pretty good. Like the Liverpool Parramatta transitway in Western Sydney has a bus every 2 to 3 minutes during peak hour, and there are double deck buses that run full.
Yeah.
So we can do it, and we can do it well. And that actually created new travel patterns that didn't exist prior to it opening, because it filled in a network gap. So people actually changed where they were going to work or where they lived. Because
if they worked in Parramatta, they could now live in Liverpool, whereas before that wasn't an option, and vice versa.
Along the corridor rather than because there was you can still get a train between the two locations, but the corridor was more circumferential between the two locations rather than linear. So it opened up new travel options for people. So using the Sydney example again. So we did those transitways, and government went, oh, these are too expensive. So we'll do bus priority. And then kind of forgot that it was actually supposed to be doing proper bus priority.
So what surprised me, so like if I was to say why have we not focused on buses in the last decade, right? I would say it's because a lot of the transport focus and energy has been on big mega metro projects and light rail projects, okay, and a lot of rail upgrades and those sorts of things, all of which have been great projects, you know, in many ways. And you know, the transformation of George Street on light rail and the metro, etc., huge successes from a transport perspective in multiple ways. So the buses have got neglected, I think, for that reason. But if I go back, you go back to 2003, you know, there was a Labour government in there for a long time, not building many rail lines. They weren't building much infrastructure at all.
Yeah,
right.
They built one rail line, which was an extension of an existing one.
Yeah. So they didn't have any light rail projects or anything on. Why did they just not focus on buses? Well,
they did. So that early period, they spent a lot of money on operational improvements. They introduced what were then called the metro buses, most of which have now been eliminated. Probably the Northern Beaches B line is the only substantial one that has remained and got upgraded into good high quality stops, big long stop spacing, and all its vehicles are full. But it still runs a lot in a mixed environment. So, but it's just that thing of buses aren't seen as something worth investing in. I don't think I've ever seen a local MP turn up to a bus stop opening, or an elected councillor go, "Hey, we've upgraded this bus stop." They'll turn up to a station upgrade, a railway station upgrade, or a ferry stop upgrade. But if you put in a new shelter and made a bus stop fully accessible and put in some real-time information, I'd be surprised if a local representative would turn up, and would the media turn up? They're just not. It's just not seen as something that grabs attention. And Melbourne's a perfect example of this. Melbourne has quite an extensive bus network, except for the smart buses, isn't highly used. But they have whole pockets of their growth areas in their northwest suburbs in Wyndham where there are no buses. Like literally, there are no buses. Like that, and they don't even have trains. So they're building growth. They're building growth areas, or if they have buses, they don't actually connect to anything.
Yeah.
So whereas the trams in inner Melbourne, very highly used. And they've got supporting land use.
Yeah. So there is one area though where politicians are getting very much involved in buses.
Yeah.
Zero emissions buses.
Yes.
Now you've done some work on zero emission buses.
Yeah.
Good thing, bad thing, mixed thing. What are we getting right? What are we getting wrong on zero emission buses?
Yeah.
It sounds all good, right? The spin is, we're getting rid of dirty diesel. We're now making, that's polluting and lots of carbon dioxide and other pollutants. Now we're converting it over to electric, and now we have these beautiful clean buses. It's all good. There's nothing to see, and also we're going to build them locally as well. It's going to be manufactured locally, so it's going to be great. High-end jobs for local people, local buses for local people.
Yeah. So okay. Well, I'm going to start with that last one first. Okay. So 50,000 buses in Australia. Buses and coaches, public and private. All of which need to go to net zero because by 2030, transport will be the largest source of emissions in Australia.
Yeah.
So take a guess how many buses we build in Australia per month.
Per month?
Yeah, or per year. Yeah.
All right. 100.
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah,
Okay.
about depending on the month, roughly about 150.
Okay, so 150 buses, and we've got to convert 50,000.
50,000. Yeah.
And that's 150 a year.
No, 150 a month. So
150 a month. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking 2,000 a year, something in that region.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at 50,000 to do, it'll take us around 25 years.
Except a bus only lasts about 20 years. If it's a bus that really makes it to the end of its life.
And that's a diesel bus. Do electric buses last? I mean, you can probably replace the batteries, I'm guessing, in that time. So you.
Look, like with electric cars, electric bus batteries are a myth. We buy batteries that are far too big. We're buying 400 kilowatt hour batteries when we only need about 250. Be great if they're being used as grid storage with vehicle to grid. But otherwise, you're just dragging a whole heap of extra weight around for no good purpose.
Why are we over-specifying? I should really ask. Why are we over-specifying?
I'll probably offend a lot of people if I give an answer to that one.
Okay. Gold-plated asset management would be my guess, but because that's what typically.
Yeah, and people who aren't involved in bus operations actually doing the specifications. That's the same with electric bus charging as well. Gold plating, -5 to 60 degree, or temperature ranges where you got to be doing 350 kilowatts per hour, just like completely nonsense things that are unrealistic. Which
don't get me started on asset management standards in Australia on transport.
Yes.
Okay. This is good, right? We need to be net zero by 2050.
Yeah.
Right. And it's going to take about 25 years from today to convert them all. Okay. Broadly speaking, I appreciate there's some numbers and maybe you need to increase the capacity somewhere, but we're all good, aren't we? Like that's 25 years, net zero in 25 years, every bus will be zero emissions. And locally. Brilliant.
We're still buying diesel buses.
What?
Or only New South Wales has committed to no longer buying diesel buses.
Why are we still buying diesel buses? What's going on there? Is that because go on? Why is that? Why?
Well, because okay, you like this one in the estimate. Australia's unique, don't you know? We have to trial them. So New South Wales has to trial them, and Victoria couldn't just take the learnings from New South Wales; they had to trial them. And Tasmania couldn't take the learnings from Victoria and New South Wales; they had to trial them. And South Australia couldn't take the learnings from Victoria, New South Wales, and Tasmania; they had to trial them. We're still doing electric bus trials for suburban services in our capital cities.
Yes. So for those that don't know, the level of adoption of electric buses in Australia compared to,
everywhere else in the world,
well, vast swathes of the rest of the world, certainly places like Europe and Asia, okay, we are miles
Africa. We're behind Africa.
Yeah. We are miles behind, and it just, it's just one of those things about, how backwards we are on a lot of these things. And part of it is about wanting to build the buses locally rather than just buying from the world-class manufacturers that there are doing zero emission buses around the world that are being tested in multiple cities in multiple different environments and been proven to be highly effective and certainly adequate for the Australian market.
Yes.
Right.
If China can run, and same brands have electric buses and trolley buses in Harbin, which gets to -60, and in the western provinces, which are hot deserts, or the southeast of China where it's subtropical, and they can do electric buses, you go, well, what makes us actually unique that we need to have a trial?
They haven't tested whether the kangaroos will eat the batteries or not. We need to make sure that these kangaroos that are ubiquitous throughout our cities don't eat the batteries.
But there is a different side of the bus issue, which is the trolley bus fetishists. So trolley buses are an awesome form of electric transport. They were the original electric buses, and there are a lot of people who say, well, we shouldn't be doing battery buses, we should be doing trolley buses, and running overhead cables. Now, having worked in the Sydney, worked for City of Sydney, and the aversion to overhead wires, introducing trolley, thankfully not too many in Australia, people in Australia are saying that we should be doing trolley buses. But poles and wires for transport is not seen as the done thing, except for rail, because it's ugly and it creates additional street clutter and things like that. So if we want to go for quieter, cleaner, healthier public transport for buses, then it needs to be battery based in Australia. Yeah,
I mean, I think the trolley buses have got a really good place, and they do really well there's some cities where they're extremely successful. It's not an area of expertise, but I did start digging into it because I knew it was a gap, and I was very impressed with their performance and the lifetime and stuff that they do. But as you say, the wires and the political issues around the wires are a challenge.
Yeah.
So
we had trolley buses.
Yeah. So is our problems with zero emission buses a combination of many of the states are not quite ready to jump into zero emission buses yet? Two, that the local manufacturing means it's going to be a very slow rollout anyway. When we finally do get round to deciding that we have fully tested zero emission buses and they're now ready for deployment en masse. Right? Is there anything else holding us up?
Uh, so there is, I mean, there are people who are pushing renewable diesel as a replacement. So cooking oils from ethanol, etc.
Yeah, which gives you about 90% of the carbon emissions, I understand, something in that region.
It's if you're using all electric machinery during the processes, you do a reasonable job, but it doesn't get rid of the noise. It doesn't get rid of the localized health effects. So one of the brilliant things about transport electrification is it makes cities so much quieter. Like you only have to look at videos of people who haven't been to China for 5 years, and I haven't been to China in 5 years, but everybody who goes there now goes, "Oh my God, the cities are so quiet," because the entire transport system's been electrified.
Yeah.
Because if you have congestion and everybody's sitting still in their electric vehicle, you're taking up road space, and it's not a great environment in terms of what's going on around people, but it's quiet.
Yes, and this is something I've heard people say about London as well, not just China. In terms of London, people who have been back to London in the last few years, not been away for a while, have said it is a lot quieter, and noticeably so, than a city with much less electrification like Sydney.
Yeah. So focusing the electric buses on activity areas rather than spreading them evenly would be the right thing to do. But it's the areas that have high levels of activity are usually where the older depots are, so they're harder to electrify.
Yeah, so it's not a question of just plugging them into the local plug socket, is it?
No, it's not. When you have 100 buses that need about 200 kilowatt hours each at the start of the day, you're looking at either a big battery that's charging slowly for discharge while the buses are back in the depot, or you're looking at upgrading grid connections.
Yeah.
So and all the drivetrains for all the buses in Australia are actually imported anyway. None of them are made here. So it's actually it's a coach building industry that we're supporting, not an entire bus industry.
No. It's a bit smoke and mirrors, right? The economic value that we're adding on these vehicles is very low.
Yes. Yeah. So, Russell, when it comes to buses, we've talked about why people don't think they're sexy, why politicians don't think they're sexy. Can they actually support good land use and become sexy?
It's a very good question. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff in here around land use and buses, right? So let me start off let's start with suburbs, right? New suburbs. One of the mistakes I think we make on new suburbs is we don't provide decent bus services when those new suburbs are developing, right? Because the patronage is going to be low, right? Because a lot of people have moved into the suburb yet. But what you've then done is you've created the habit of people driving. And because the service wasn't very good, and you haven't made sure that you've got the priorities there for the buses. So what you end up with is a car-dependent suburb because you didn't put the public transport in right from the start. So I think that's something that we need to be working on in terms of thinking about the long-term payback of investing in the buses and that sort of path dependency kind of thing. Then I think you've got the role of buses when it comes to connecting into things like transit-oriented development. So you really want to be, if you've got start with a station, and you want people to come in either from the transit, or if they're in the transit-oriented development zone, typically they'll be able to walk in or cycle in into the station. But a little bit further than that, the bus is the best option probably. And so you want to be able to connect into the station really quickly and frequently, and you want the bus to be able to do that, to do the heavy lifting on that, to get them in, especially at peak times. And I think we're just not very good at that interconnection generally, of just having lots of buses prioritized going in and out of stations to connect people through. So that's one of the things I think we can do, which would then support. And the other thing about that is it widens that transit-oriented development area, because at the moment we tend to restrict it down to a few hundred meters around the station. But if you increase the connections into that station much more effectively, both through active transport, but then further afield on using buses, I think you can then argue for higher densities in those outer areas of the station as well.
Yeah.
Right? It might not be high density 30 stories, but you can do 6 to 8 stories, for example, medium density, and shift lots of numbers of people in from the bus into the stations, etc. I think one of the interesting things is, bus hubs. So we do transit-oriented development around stations. Why don't we do transit-oriented development around bus hubs? So if you've got a significant bus hub, lots of buses coming in and out, lots of different routes, lots of accessibility into different places, why would you not build density around that bus hub?
Well, I think at the moment it comes back to exactly the point of the effects of diesel. Who wants to live near a place where there's lots of noisy buses sitting there chugging away while they're waiting to go out onto their next route?
Yeah. So there's an amenity thing here is that because if they're noisy, as you say, noisy, they're polluting, but if they're going to be quieter, much less pollution, maybe that's an opportunity in the future.
Yeah, well, yeah, and there's also the I suppose the amount of land that is taken up with the bus hub. So a train station or a tram stop, very compact in the scheme of things. You'll have a corridor that's maybe 30 meters wide if it's got multiple routes going through it, and you can get quite close in terms of density, or once you get out of the humidity interchange. Whereas buses, they take up room to circulate, they need to lay over between routes unless you're doing lots of through routing. So if I think of somewhere like the Bankstown in Sydney, it's got a mixture of through running buses and terminating buses. So you have a lot of land that's taken up by the buses, but it also has, once the line reopens, we'll have connection to metro and heavy rail.
So just on that point then, if stopovers are a big issue with land, and they are, okay, especially at significant termini. Does autonomous buses solve this problem for us? Is autonomous buses going to create a great opportunity for us to free up a whole load of land that we're currently using for bus layovers?
There's one aspect that they will solve, and that's actually human requirements.
Yes, you're not going to need to have somewhere for the driver to go to the toilet and things.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So if you think the reason why we have bus layovers is that drivers require breaks every couple of hours. And actually the population of drivers is actually aging, so they'll probably actually need more frequent breaks, given that a lot of males. So they're, driving a commercial vehicle is very labor intensive. Like you're using your brain a lot. So
which is why we said you have to have breaks every 2 hours for safety reasons as much as anything.
Yeah, well, do you want a fatigued bus driver carrying a bus full of 50 people? No.
Definitely.
So so they need brakes. So they have two brakes. They have the when a bus ends a route, it has a recovery time, which is congestion, which we talked about ways of solving that. And then there's a break time where where the driver can do what they need to do. So given that you need to build facilities for the drivers, so you need break rooms, you need toilets, you don't then build a toilet at the terminus that's far away, because then you have to build 20 toilets.
Yeah.
And then you have to deal with the local people who don't want the driver's break facility in their area, and having going back, stinky, dirty diesel bus, sitting there idling because they need to keep the air conditioning running while they have their break.
Yeah.
So if you have autonomous buses, then where the bus sits during its recovery time between the two routes only becomes an issue if there's a charging requirement. So an electric autonomous bus, if it has enough battery to do its full service throughout the day, then basically if you can find a space for it to stop, you can take it out of the CBD environment for them. You still need some time recovery facility within the CBD, but it can be much smaller because you then through route it rather than having it run as a shuttle. Thanks for another really interesting conversation, Russell.
No problem, Graham. Thank you very much. It was great to chat again. Thank you to our audience for listening. Please like, subscribe, comment on this podcast and tell us what you think. And if you're feeling generous, please buy us a coffee on our Patreon account. That would be much appreciated. Have a great day.